This week, we talk to an electrician who prefers biking over his pickup truck to get to work and loves how it brings him closer to his city. Take a listen.
So first of all, is this your bike? And can you tell me about it?
Yes, this is my bike. What could I tell you about it? It is an all-city space horse. I got it in 2024, April, I think. Uh, a little bit on a whim, maybe. I'd been riding my bike since I moved back to the city in September of 23, and I kind of had some goals going for myself. I wanted to ride a century over the summer, or probably in the fall, and the bike I had wasn't cut out for that. So little by little, I'm kind of making excuses for myself to get it. Stop into a shop, looking for a Surly, and this was in the window and it fit me. And a friend of mine had already told me about these bikes, all cities, and being a new rider and riding just a used Trek hybrid, I actually was a little nervous that I wasn't good enough of a biker to hop onto this immediately. But no, it's been a great bike. It's the nicest thing I own. It's a beautiful thing, and I stare at it longingly sometimes.
That's awesome. That's super cool. And how long have you been biking? What got you into it?
I've been biking on and off since 2019, let's say. Just because I was living in another town, started biking to work there in the summer, crashed that bike, stopped riding, moved to another town, got a used bike there, biked to work. That was tough because I was working outdoors on rooftops in the summer, wearing coveralls, so I was kicking myself and then riding my bike back home uphill. And then brought that bike back here. And when I came back to the city, I came back with a pickup truck, which was an obnoxious thing to drive here in these narrower streets we have. So I started riding the bike and I started seeing just how far I could get around in the bike. The real catalyst was meeting a friend up by Loyola University for just to catch up. And I realized I could get to the lake and then take the lake up there and then get there and then come back on the bike. And that was kind of it for me from there.
That's awesome. That's super cool. And what do you use your bike for? You got all these panniers on it.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So it's a mix, right? Like I ride my bike to work. I don't ride this bike to work, but I ride a bike to work. This bike is more recreational for me, just go on long rides along the lake or the North Branch, North Channel trails. The bags you see here are from a tour I went on last year in June because I was about to start an apprenticeship. I got told that for the next 5 years I wouldn't be able to take any time off, and I took that seriously. So I quit one job, gave myself a month in between, and one of the staff at Working Bikes got the little bug in my head about going on a tour. So this is all for riding from Milwaukee to Minneapolis, and I did that last year, which was awesome.
That's super cool. That's fantastic. And what do you like about biking Chicago? You talked about it a little bit, but what makes it special for you?
Well, on the practical side, it is a much nicer way to get around. You know, traffic is always a concern, but not the same kind of concern as when it directly affects you getting around, right? Like you're not stuck behind anybody as much. It's way nicer because you're, to repeat what everyone else has said, right? You're closer to everything around you. Like if I'm passing by somebody, I can actually make eye contact with them. I can even like chat almost with folks. On the way down, I kind of did a little giddy up and spooked somebody who was getting in their car. And just like biking past them, was able to have a little conversation like, oh, my bad. Oh, don't worry. Yada, yada, yada. And that's a fun interaction you just can't have when you're behind a windshield, you know, on the other side of a half-mile long hood. So, and then also like, today's a beautiful day. It's a little chilly, but the sun's out. There's a nice soft breeze. The coolness is an invigorating kind of coolness. And if I were driving, I wouldn't feel any of that. So it's just such a nicer way to get around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what do you dislike about biking Chicago? Are there things that are hard or you feel like could be better?
It's hard to say for me. I think because I take a lot of stuff for granted. One, I can bike. Two, I can get away with a lot of stuff that other folks probably can. Like, if I'm coming up to something where I need to slow down and make some tight maneuver around cars, I can do that, right? Um, because I can, right? And I take that for granted. So it's easy for me to get around tight spots in traffic. As far as the safety stuff, like, sometimes a car is parked in the bike lane, right? For me, it's easy enough to throw a shoulder check, see what's coming behind me, get in the way potentially of whatever's coming behind me, and just say, screw it, I'm going around you. And I don't even worry about it. But that's me. That's my life and my health or safety I'm taking charge of. If I were someone with their kids in the back, that's way scarier. If I'm someone with a greater concern for my well-being, that's certainly more concerning as well.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. I mean, I'll just say infrastructure is always good. Getting folks to get their heads out of their butts when they're driving is always good. Getting folks to look when they open their car doors and deliver whatever Uber Eats they're delivering, that would be great. But I have an easy enough time for my risk tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe like 2 more questions here. Yeah, I think as someone who drives, as someone who has that experience, what would you say to people who are driving who are concerned about like bike lanes and that infrastructure and the impact on like traffic? Because a lot of people who just bike, they're like, well, we got to build more bike lanes, but
Right.
then drivers are like, well, you can't take away traffic lanes. What would you say to someone who's concerned about that, as someone who does both?
I would say go for a bike ride. Hopefully you have someone in your life who already rides their bikes and can take you and sort of guide you, because it is very intimidating to do from the beginning, right? Like as I started biking, it was very much relying on greenways and only going with their bike. So like it's a very gradual process to go from I don't bike at all to I'm suddenly biking on city streets. But, go for bike rides in these bits of infrastructure that you're concerned about. So for example, I live by Belmont Avenue where they have the protected bike lanes in Avondale. For me, that's great. But I know for everybody else in their car, it's the worst thing ever. If you could just take a ride there and see how much safer you feel compared to when you're riding somewhere where there's just a line of paint separating you from the cars, right? And feel how much safer that is. Feel how much easier it is to find an interesting spot along the way and just pull in, right? Because that's another thing I like about biking is I can be riding to whatever my destination is, see a spot, and stop. My wallet might not like that all the time, but it's a fun thing, and it's a fun way to interact and learn about the city, right? That I grew up in and sometimes feel like I don't know anything about. But yeah, so that's what I would say to car drivers is go for a ride along these bits and see, one, how much nicer it is for bikers and why it is that we're asking for these things. And then also, two, hopefully you see how much fun riding your bike is, even in the city streets.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer. You do maybe 1 or 2 more. Let me think. Maybe a last one here. Again, kind of similar vein, but what do you think people who don't bike might misunderstand about biking or people who bike and why they do that?
Well, I think the thing I get self-conscious about sometimes is rolling through stop signs, or if I'm at a red light and I see that no cross traffic is coming, I'll take that as well. Maybe I'll make a full stop, but then look, go. So for that, I would ask for understanding of how much more difficult it is to get a bike going again. Once you've stopped, you lose a lot of momentum depending on the gear that you're in when you stopped. It could be a question of mashing the pedals for 5 whole minutes before you clear the intersection. Whereas in a car, you stop, and even in cars, it's annoying, right? Like I drive a lot too. It's annoying to come to a stop, get the car going again. So just understand that it's worse on a bike. You really lose a lot of the joy and efficiency of riding a bike if you're stopping everywhere that a car needs to stop. And then also too, if you take that ride on a bike in your neighborhood, you'll see that a lot of the safety rules that cars have to follow are less necessary on a bike. So for example, if you come to a 4-way stop in a car, you have to stop, you have to look both ways because your visibility is a lot more limited based on the fact that you've got a hood in front of you, right? So like your sight lines down the crossing traffic is limited. Whereas on a bike, where you stop is where you are, right? Like if,
But yeah, I think you're saying basically like you get self-conscious when you're not following those road rules.
Yeah.
But it's not the same, and like
Right.
even to that point, you've experienced driving a big truck. You also like hearing like on a bike, you can hear if there's a car.
Yeah.
You can hear other stuff.
Right.
You're not going to hear anything really in a car. So it's like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the same rules apply.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Well, those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you want to say about your biking experience or biking in Chicago?
I think one thing that I try to use when I'm biking, basically one thing I try to use whenever I'm getting myself around in any way, is I ride my bike. I drive. I don't ride a motorcycle, but I really wanted to once and got super into just reading about how all that works. I don't fly an airplane, but I got super into that once and read a whole lot into how all that works. And basically, every mode of transportation has tricks on how to get around safely. Or boating, right? Like here we're by the river, the folks who kayak here have to do a Coast Guard safety training where they learn the nautical rules of the road. And one of those rules, for example, is that the least maneuverable vehicle gets the right of way, but also that everyone involved has a duty to avoid collisions, right? With motorcycling, you learn about taking turns where the radius of your turn decreases as you go. So basically you're taking wider turns so that you get better visibility into what you're turning into. And whatever's coming your way gets better, like sees you sooner, right? Versus clipping the apex like you're a racer and then, you pop out of nowhere for someone who's coming over and also you get surprised by what you see around the corner. So basically what I'm getting at is that every form of transportation has lessons for you for biking, walking, however it is. When I'm driving, especially when I'm driving at night and I see bike riders going back and forth, I might see someone who doesn't have lights on and I realize, okay, that's how invisible they look to me when I'm driving. So if I forget my lights, don't charge them or whatever, I know how invisible I am. And that might educate what routes I take or, how I ride in that circumstance. So that's one thing I would say is just take lessons from every way there is to get around because every form of transportation has a lesson for you. I would also say that folks should take some time to learn how their gears work. If you have gears, right? I know single speeds are real popular here, but I love that. I love my gears, and a lot of times I'll be behind someone who has gears too, but they're stuck on their highest gear, their hardest gear. So when we're getting going from an intersection, they're mashing on their pedals, going real slow, and I'm maybe in some middle to higher gear. And it's a lot easier to get started. So that's something that's confusing to learn. Probably the best thing I could say, just if this is the first time someone's hearing about it, is the lower number, if you have an indicator, is lower effort. And then higher number is higher speed, for when you're already going fast. Learn to use that. Learn to leverage that when you're going up a hill, when you're getting started from a stop, shift to a lower gear as you're going to stop, and then get going, and then shift to a higher gear as you get faster. It makes biking easier. It makes it easier to go longer distances. And the last thing is to really just keep things simple and keep things fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you want to start biking, don't try to commit to biking every single day, even when you don't want to, because the second it becomes a chore, you're not going to do it anymore. Or the second you're worried about not being fast enough or not being enough of a risk taker, you're not going to do it anymore. So you figure out, what works for you. You figure out your pace, your, path of progression that you want to take of like what it means to be a better biker for you, right? What it means to be a good biker for you. Figure all that out for yourself, and don't worry about what anyone else is doing around you.
Thanks for watching that interview. Subscribe to see more conversations with Chicagoans biking around their city, dropping every other week.